Mandolin orchestras were popular all over Europe at the beginning of the 20th century. Almost every town and every club had one. My grandfather and his brothers were in a Jewish mandolin orchestra in Góra Kalwaria in Poland. I found out about it during my research about our family's history. I became interested in genealogy and family research a few years ago. I went to see the town where my grandfather came from. My grandfather was born in Góra Kalwaria in Poland in 1908. He was a Zionist. He immigrated to British Mandate Palestine, Israel in 1935. But his family stayed in Poland and they all perished during the Second World War in the Holocaust. My grandfather never talked about life before the war in Poland, and for us it was never told. The story was never told. When I went to Góra Kalwaria, I met people who were living there before the wars. They knew my family and they were showing me around. I felt very welcome over there. And at the end of the tour, we sat and we were looking for ways of what to do with what we saw, what to do with this. And one of the ideas was to erect a tombstone in the Jewish cemetery, Matzeva, in the Jewish cemetery for those who do not, from our family members who do not have a tombstone or their tombstone was desecrated during the war. We erected this tombstone, this Matzeva, and the feeling was like the bad guys won. It was not, and so I was looking for a way that would be more of commemorating life there before the war, that was basically paused there and now revived or continue in a way. During the research I found out that my grandfather was a member of a mandolin orchestra, his brother was the band manager of the orchestra, and another brother, younger brother, played in that orchestra as well. They were all 11 altogether. The idea was to have a modern orchestra play that repertoire that the historic orchestra might have played. I've been living in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, for over 10 years. I've been going to the Jewish Music Festival every year. They bring great world music, and my first thought was to contact the festival.
I got this call from Avner Yonai, and he came in and told me about this amazing sounding project. I let him know about Mike Marshall, who's an internationally known mandolin player who lives in the East Bay, and I know him. And so we went over there.
And she asked me if I would be interested in putting together a mandolin ensemble for their festival this year. And had a meeting with a fellow named Avner, and he told me his whole story of searching the roots of his family back to Poland. And that his grandfather was in a mandolin orchestra, and showed me this photo, and it was very intriguing to me. I wasn't aware that Poland had mandolin orchestras, let alone Jewish mandolin orchestras. So he said, I'd like to recreate this at the festival, and would you be the musical director for it? So I said, sure, this sounds like a delightful idea. And I certainly know lots of mandolin players. I started making phone calls to try to put this group together and managed to get some of the finest players in the world.
And the next thing I know, I was getting a call from Mike Marshall. And Mike Marshall's, one of my mandolin heroes. And so that was pretty amazing to get a call from him and be asked to participate in this project. And more than that, to be able to contribute repertoire, and we're playing 4 or 5 of my pieces. So it's really exciting to me, and I've wanted to be part of a project like this for many years, and it's great that it's come together and that I'm getting to be a part of it. It's really exciting.
So we had Eric Stein that we brought in from Canada, and Jeff Warshauer, who we brought in from New York, and a very close friend of the festival is Avia Vital, who was nominated for a Grammy last year, the same time that the project happened.
About a year ago, I received an email from Avner Yonai that told me all the story about the Ger Orchestra and showed me the pictures. It was extremely fascinating for me because it he reached me in a time that I was making a research about mandolin orchestras in Europe at the beginning of the century, and then in the kibbutz in Israel in the 50s. It was also a very common thing, mandolin orchestra. So really, the part that I was missing in the puzzle was the Jewish mandolin orchestras in Poland before the war.
When Mike Marshall called me for this project a few months ago, he asked about some music from that era. So I was thinking, oh, this is great, you know, finally the time has come. And coincidentally, I was in Prague when he called me, or emailed me rather. So I met with my friend who has a big archive of that orchestral music from the 30s, and we went through many pieces, and I'm happy that we are actually using 2 of those pieces at this concert.
February 25th and 26th marked 70th anniversary of the day expelled a Jewish community of Góra Kalwaria to Treblinka and Ghetto Warsaw, which was a great tragedy to the Jewish community and to Góra Kalwaria. So this project and concert will pay tribute to the Jewish community of Góra Kalwaria and to the Mandolin Orchestra of Góra Kalwaria.
It was a great success on all aspects. Jeff Warshauer, which is a world-renowned Yiddish music performer, was on stage singing in Yiddish, and I was sitting in the crowd listening to Jeff on one side, and then I hear the crowd singing the same words, singing along with him. They all knew the word that he was singing.
The concert was spectacular. People erupted into a standing ovation, and the sound in Freight and Salvage was fantastic. The relatives that Avner brought over from Israel to have his father there and his uncle there, his sisters there. It was powerful on an emotional level. It felt like a historic event for the festival and for music, in folk music in general, that the mandolin could be given that sound again that is very hard to find anymore. You don't find mandolin orchestras of that caliber very much in this country. And the fact that we were able to bring together these many people of this quality to produce this sound for this reason, to give homage to an ensemble that was martyred, it was spine-tingling.
After the concert, people came to me, people who were Holocaust survivors or elderly people who lived in Poland before the war, came to me and were saying, with tears in their eyes, and they were saying, Avner, we stopped thinking or dreaming to ever hear the music from before we've left Poland ever again.
My wife grabbed my hand, I remember, about halfway through, and she squeezed it, and I turned and looked at her, and I noticed there was a tear in her eye, and I spoke to her about it afterwards, and I said, honey, did you have that emotional reaction to this that brought you back to your childhood and the stories that your parents told you and what it must have been like in the shtetl? And she said, yes, honey. She says, that's exactly the way I felt. And when it was all over, we just squeezed each other's hand. I remember reaching across and giving her a peck on the cheek. And it was one of those moments that I haven't felt, and we haven't felt in a long, long time.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It was awesome. Take it to Krakow. Take it to Krakow. It deserves to go to Krakow. Really? That's the next step. Oh, you got your hand. I did, dude.
Ellie. No more from Avner. It's not.
I'm gonna miss it. We haven't